Welcome to Gavel. I'm your host, Cobb District Attorney Vic Reynolds. We're very excited to be back in the studio with our partners here at TV 23 as we film our fourth installment of Gavel. This show is about the criminal justice system in Cobb County, and our goal here is to educate and inform our citizens about a system that remains a mystery to most folks. As you may recall, in our previous shows, we initially looked at the different types of courts within the Cobb criminal justice system. We also took an in-depth look at what a clerk's office does, their functions, their duties, their responsibilities. And then last month we took an in-depth look at probate court and what they do day in and day out here in Cobb County. In the future, we intend to look at subjects like jury duty, what your responsibilities are in that regard, how probation works, and other type of subjects that may affect all of us during some point of our lives and our residency in this county. Today we're going to take a look at a little bit different subject, one that is very somber and very serious, and that's what happens to you and what the circumstances are if you're a victim of a crime here in Cobb County. We're very blessed in this county in that comparing us to other metropolitan counties, the crime rate is much lower than surrounding counties. But still, when you have a county this large, you're going to have to deal with crime, and some folks, very sad to say, are going to become victims of those circumstances. And in that regard today, we're very honored to have as our guest Ms. Kim McCoy. Kim is the director of the Victim Witness Unit here in Cobb County, a position that she's held some 15 years. I know firsthand the type of work Kim does with victims of crime day in and day out because I'm very blessed to work with both Kim and her staff in the Cobb DA's office, so we're very honored to have her as our guest. Kim, welcome to Gavel, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Vic. Thank you for having me.
Well, let's start at the beginning. Obviously, no one wants to become a victim of a crime. No one intends to become a victim of a crime, but you and I both know, based on what we do day in and day out, that people do in fact become victims of crime. Tell us a little bit about what a Victim Witness Unit is, what it does, and how it serves victims of crime.
Sure. By law, the Victim Witness Unit is created to provide support and notification services to victims of crime. Those can look different in every office, but in the Cobb office, the support services come from talking to victims, helping them understand what is occurring with the criminal case, assisting them in finding resources in the community that can assist when it's not a criminal justice issue, like they need help with rent or they need counseling, they need medications, they're just falling down on their luck because victims are humans just like we are, and so they have needs outside the criminal justice system as well. So that support comes in a lot of different areas. The notification piece obviously is tied directly to the criminal justice system in that when court dates occur, when hearings occur, when there's movement on the defendant's case, then our staff and our unit would be responsible for notifying the victims of those court dates, explaining the hearing, discussing with them whether or not they need to be there or they can be there, discussing what the possible outcomes of the hearing might be, and then what would happen with that case in the future. So primarily for support and notification for victims as their case moves through the criminal justice system.
You know, Kim, we've learned previously that in Cobb Superior Court there are 10 Superior Court judges, and frequently all 10, and even on occasion we may have an 11th or 12th courtroom going on. Do your folks reach out to victims in each one of those courtrooms? Are you literally there as the cases progress through the court system?
Yes, and in addition to the 10 Superior Courts, we also cover victim services in magistrate court at the probable cause and bond level, as well as in juvenile court when there are victims of juvenile crimes that are occurring here in Cobb as well. So on a daily basis, we have 16 courts that we're responsible for notification and support services to those victims. And in addition, occasionally we have visiting judges coming in, and so there is the possibility to have more than 16 judges sitting on a bench at any given time for us to provide support and notification to those victims. We do go to court with victims, so anytime a victim is in court, we make every effort to be there and to sit with them and to explain to them what is happening, to answer their questions as the hearing itself is moving, and then to answer questions afterwards if they didn't understand or did not hear anything.
Well, as I told the viewers a moment ago, you're part of the Cobb DA's office, and you and I work together day in and day out. Tell the viewers, if you would, even though you're part of that DA's office, how large is your staff in serving the victims of crime in Cobb County?
The unit itself is staffed with 14 people. 2 of those are notification clerks, so they're primarily responsible for answering the phones, directing the traffic, sending out the required notifications. I have a part-time advocate who works in partnership with the domestic violence unit and stalking unit for Cobb Police. So she's physically not in our office, she's physically with Cobb Police. Myself as the director, and then I have 8 full-time advocates and 2 part-time advocates that provide those services in those 16 different courts.
So obviously, you know, we're certainly a firm believer in Cobb. We're doing more with less, but
Right.
you're spread pretty thin. I mean,
Sure.
that would be a fair statement, wouldn't it?
Sure. If we have all 16 courts running and visiting judges, in addition to the court caseload, we also service victims in specialized units like crimes against women and children, the vehicular homicide unit, the animal cruelty unit, where while the animals are the actual victims, the owners of the animals
Certainly.
Can certainly be involved as well if they are not the perpetrators in the case. And then, of course, the major crimes unit and the cold case unit. So we do have the opportunity to provide services in a lot of different areas, in a lot of different ways on any given day here in Cobb.
Well, let's start a little bit at the beginning, too. How does one qualify for the services that your offers to a victim of a crime?
Okay. Well, generally, when a warrant is issued and a defendant is identified as having committed a criminal act, the warrant is issued against that defendant, and there's a victim named in that warrant. If it is a felony warrant, the case comes to the district attorney's office for prosecution, and it's at that time that our office would reach out to the victim by way of the required notifications to let them know that we've received the case, that these are the likely possibilities of what will happen with the case, and these are resources in the community that can assist them and provide them with the opportunity to complete a victim impact statement and a restitution statement as well. We also do receive cold calls, so anybody from the community can call us and ask questions and seek resources and referrals, but our mandated notifications under law are to victims where a criminal case has ensued.
Now, we've also learned in previous Gavel to Gavel shows that there are different types of court systems, and you've mentioned both Superior Court, Juvenile Court, Magistrate Court. There's also a victim witness advocate that operates through the solicitor's office in misdemeanor court, correct?
That's correct.
We do not cover that. Your office doesn't cover state court. It only covers Superior and Juvenile and Magistrate Court.
That's correct. And the solicitor's office victim witness would operate much like we do. Their cases are going to be different. They would not see the murders, the rapes, the robberies, the felony level vehicular homicides, felony cruelties, and sexual assault cases against children, but they do provide very similar services to what we do.
The reality is our office, the DA's office, sees the worst of the worst. We see some terrible crimes over there. Let's imagine now, for the viewers' purposes, that someone has become a victim, that either they or a member of their family has been hurt or a victim of a crime of some sort. Tell the viewers, if you would, based on your experience, the potential and actual impact that crime may have on a victim.
Okay. Well, every victim is different, just like every human being and every person is different. So a victim impact is going to be particularly determined by that person. But what we commonly see in the trauma that victims experience is that victims are hurt financially. There's always a financial cost, whether it's counseling, whether it's missed time from work, whether it's something tangible like my checkbook has been stolen or my credit card has been stolen or my property has been damaged. We don't pay a lot of attention to property crimes, but most of us wouldn't have the money to replace property in these economic times if our property was damaged. So it has become a big issue for victims. So there are some tangible financial impacts, and then in addition to just my quality of life, how is my quality of life impacted because this crime has been affected against me? So we see financial impacts. We also see physical impacts. Victims are hurt every day. They have broken arms, they have busted lips, they have bloody noses and black eyes, on the less severe side. And then on the more severe side, they have loss of limbs. They have internal damage to organs. In very severe cases, there can be brain damage as a result of physical assaults. And anything that can puncture or that can break your skin can cause physical damage to a victim. And then probably the worst that we see is the emotional damage. Sometimes quite honestly, people are just inconvenienced. They're upset, they're angry that somebody has taken advantage of them or committed a crime against them, and they can easily deal with that and put that to the side. Sometimes people are just mad. But in the extreme cases, we deal with people who have PTSD, who develop anxiety disorders, who have to go into counseling, whether it be short-term to deal with the situation immediately or long-term counseling. So the emotional impacts are the impacts that are not as easily seen for victims, which is why it's so important that they do have a conduit and a contact in the district attorney's office. So, one of the best calls I make is when I can call a victim and say, hey, I'm just checking on you today, and the response is, well, today's a good day, So it's the emotional impact is sometimes far more devastating than either the financial impact or the physical impact. And then obviously we have people who die, unfortunately, as a result of criminal acts that are committed here in Cobb. And, the long-lasting effects of a death can be devastating to an individual, to a family, to the dynamics of a family and a marriage and a sibling relationship. The reality is you're never not a victim. Certainly. You can survive. You can move forward. You can develop a new normal and a new way of life, but the reality is you're never not a victim once someone has chosen to initiate a crime against you.
Well, let's hold that thought. We're going to take a short break. When I come back, I want to talk a little bit about how the impact of crime may not only affect the victim, but may affect the victim's family members and loved ones as well. Okay?
Sure.
Stay tuned. We'll be right back after this break to Gavel with our guest, Kim McCoy. Thank you.
Son, tell him that I've begun to dream of things to come, and tell the trees not to look for me. I'm going to find some peace of mind. Wake the sun. Wake the sun, wake the sun, wake the sun.
Did you know kids who play outdoors have healthier lungs?
Totally.
I did. Did you know that boys that play with dolls make better husbands?
My son has lots of dolls.
But did you know terry cloth diapers breathe better?
I did.
It's totally true.
Oh, yeah.
Did you know that strollers have the right of way on a sidewalk?
Yes.
Yep, I did. Did you guys
Did you know that kids who eat breakfast have higher GPAs?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. That's actually what I was going to say.
Did you know babies should never touch silver? It's really bad for them.
I knew that.
Did you guys know that statistically friendly kids have more friends?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's obvious.
Did you know most people think they're using the right car seat for their kid, but they're not?
Parents who really know it all know for sure that their child is in the right seat at the right age and size. Visit safercar.gov/the-right-seat to make sure your child is protected.
I'm putting that on my blog.
I just put it in mine.
Welcome back to Gavel. I'm your host, Cobb District Attorney Vic Reynolds, and we're talking today with Ms. Kim McCoy, who is the director of the Cobb DA Victim Witness Unit. Kim, before we broke, we were talking a little bit about the impact of crime, the sense of security that may be lost by individuals. But as you and I know, and I want you to share with the viewers, that being a victim of a crime can impact other family members and loved ones as well. Is that correct?
Sure. Even though it may be an individual that is hurt, what that individual is feeling and how that individual is coping and dealing with something impacts everybody around them. Let's liken it to this. If you work in a close-knit work area, you know when your coworker's having a bad day. So your family members who know you better than anybody know when you're not dealing with something very well or that you're just having a bad day. And the impact to the relationships from a victim standpoint, victims may pull away because they don't want a family member to be affected by what they're going through. They may be ashamed. We have a father who is very active in the community, and he tells people when he speaks, I couldn't protect my daughter. So you also have some guilt and some shame from the family member standpoint when it's another family member that is impacted by crime. So there are a lot of different things that go through, and I think a lot of what we encourage family members is take care of your relationship. Make sure you're working together on your relationship, either through professional help, through counseling, through support groups, if you're faith-based, through praying together, but just keeping that communication open so that you're not inadvertently pushing your family members away or your friends. It can extend even to your close-knit friends and your coworkers who also are concerned, who want to take care of you.
Well, let's talk about some of those resources. Do you guys in your position, are you able to direct victims and victims' family to certain community resources? And if you are, can you talk a little bit to the viewers about what some of those resources may be?
Sure. I think the biggest categories of victimization with the greatest impact that we see are the homicides, the child assaults, sexual assaults, and the domestic violence cases. So we're very blessed in Cobb that we have 3 organizations that tailor services to those areas. One is the Crime Victims Advocacy Council, also called CVAC, and CVAC provides support groups and education and awareness to family members and loved ones who have lost a loved one due to a murder that has been committed in any of the metro areas, not just Cobb. The YWCA is our parent organization for our domestic violence and sexual assault crimes that occur here in Cobb County. So they provide a wide variety of services for both domestic violence and sexual assault victims, including hospital accompaniment, counseling, group support groups, individual counseling. They also, of course, provide emergency shelter as well as transitional housing to victims who are in need of housing assistance and shelter assistance. And then Safe Path is our Children's Advocacy Center, and they provide forensic interviewing and counseling services to child victims who have been impacted by sexual assault crimes and by severe physical traumatic events that have occurred in their life. So we have great resources here in Cobb for specific victimization. And then we have great nonprofits who provide just all-around services to people who are in need. Places like Center for Family Resources, who provide job skills and housing assistance and living assistance to people who are in need. And as I said before, victims are human, and sometimes their needs are not the criminal case. They have things that they need to be made right in their life before they can even focus on the criminal case. And then Must Ministries is another great nonprofit here in Cobb. And there's just way too many to mention by name, but we do have a resource booklet available. There's a lot of great Latino services here in Cobb County, and we do have a large Hispanic population. So what you can find on the District Attorney's Office website is a resource packet for the most common agencies that we get calls about, and it's just in a PDF format, and the general community can pull that up and see what's available.
Well, we are blessed here in Cobb, and our partners here at TV23 are gracious enough that they're going to run after this episode some of those resources for victims and their families. One more question about these resources, and then we'll move on to another subject. Financial resource. Is there anything of that nature available to a victim or a victim's family that may find themselves in a financial quandary because of a crime committed against them?
Sure. There are 3 ways, actually. The first way is through the State of Georgia's Crime Victims Compensation Program, and that program will assist victims of crime with individual expenses that have occurred as a result of the victimization. So things like medical bills, counseling bills, funeral expenses, lost wages and loss of support, and professional crime scene cleanup. So that's a state-ran agency. We do provide the referrals to victims, and we will assist them with their application process and help them get together the documentation that they need to file for that financial assistance. The second way is through restitution, and restitution is ordered through the criminal process. Once a defendant is convicted, the judge, if the judge sees fit, can order that defendant to pay back the victim any expenses that the victim might have incurred. And restitution is really up to the discretion of the judge, and it can include any of the things we've just talked about, the medical, the counseling, etc. But it also can include things like missed time from work, or the mileage expenses if they've had to travel from far to get to court. A wide variety of things a victim can request through as property damage, because compensation does not cover property damage. And then the third aspect is through a civil suit. Victims always have the option to sue a defendant or an organization civilly to try to recoup those losses. And while we don't do that, we do have referrals for attorneys in our community who will assist victims with civil suits.
Well, you know, you and I, as recently as yesterday evening, were talking about restitution, and one of the goals of this administration is to make sure that we do everything humanly possible to restore a victim back at least minimally financially to the position they were in. And that's an issue that's very important to us, and it's an issue that we'll probably be touching on in Gavel to Gavel episodes down the road. Let me ask you another question, Kim. Let's say that we have a situation where a criminal case begins, but something during the course of the investigation makes us realize that there's not enough evidence to proceed, or there's something wrong with the case and it's not allowed to make its way through the process. Obviously, we still have individuals who may be victims.
Sure.
Even though the criminal case doesn't commence, would you all still be in a position to do what you can do to assist those individuals who still would consider themselves to be victims of crime?
Sure, on some levels, but that's also another reason that is so important that we know about our community resources, because the community resources are not dependent on a criminal case. So the community resources like the YWCA or CVAC or Safe Path or any of the nonprofits that I've already mentioned, victims can choose to avail themselves of their services and their resources regardless of anything else. In the Victim Witness Unit in the District Attorney's Office, we're required to notify you of the court case. So if there's no court case, there's no notification piece. But we would still be a resource and a referral for victims with general questions or who needed community assistance, or sometimes they just need somebody to talk to. While we're not counselors, we can lend a listening ear. So we certainly would never turn a caller or a walk-in away. There would just be limited resources that we could provide to them.
Tell the viewers, if you would, Kim, and I know these numbers staggered me when I learned them, the amount of victim contacts, just a guesstimate of what your staff makes during the course of a calendar year in working with victims.
In the last quarter, I don't think I ran the calendar year, I apologize, but in the last quarter we had about 30,000 contacts with victims.
It's amazing. So that's,
and the quarter is July to September.
Well, I do recollect in 13 looking at some figures, you guys were over 100,000 contacts, so that would make sense if we extrapolate that out. As we get toward the end of the show, let me ask you not a difficult question, but a difficult circumstance. On those occasions where our office sees a child victim, where something awful has happened to a child of a sexual or physical nature, tell the viewers a little bit about what you guys do on the front end to make that child feel comfortable, to make he or she aware of what a courtroom is and what each player does in the courtroom. Tell the viewers a little bit about what you guys do in those regards.
Okay. Well, first and foremost, when we moved into the new courthouse, we had the opportunity to work with the county to build a child-friendly waiting room. So we have a specific waiting room for victims, but it's primarily built with children in mind, where we have a TV and stuffed animals and games and books and things of that nature. So they're not waiting in the general public area. They have their own little private waiting area. But I have 3 child advocates who work in our unit who are fantastic at what they do, and they all have a heart and a passion for working with children. So when we have a child that is a victim of a crime, when we work with that case, we would bring them into the courthouse. We would walk them around, kind of give them a little tour to get them educated and comfortable in the setting. We would take them to the courtroom and let them see how the courtroom is set up. I've had kids who've sang Elvis from the microphone, you know, because they were so comfortable and just kind of playing around in the courtroom. So, but we do walk them through that process. We have coloring books and paper dolls that we use to explain the court setting and just to kind of educate them. And that education piece alone takes some fear out of it. And then just having that one-on-one contact with the advocate that they know is going to be with them every step of the way takes a lot of the fear out of that as well.
Well, Kim, I will tell you, and not selfishly because you and I work together, but I see firsthand what you and your advocates do. I've seen your advocates stay with victims, hold their hands, be with their families, stay with them late, stay with them while a jury's deliberating and through tough times. And we're very blessed in this county to have you and your staff and what you do for victims of crime. And thank you for joining us today. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And thank you to the viewers of Gavel to Gavel. We appreciate you tuning in, watching us today, and would ask that you stay tuned in the future as we look at other portions and factions and parts of the Cobb criminal justice system and how it may affect you, your family, and any part of your life in the future. I'm Cobb DA Vic Reynolds, and thank you for joining us today.
Learning how to kickflip 6 stairs takes determination. So will getting into college. I've got what it takes. So do you.
A full life, measured in seats, starts with the right ones early on. Car crashes are the #1 killer of children 1 through 13. Learn how to prevent deaths and injuries by using the right car seat for your child's age and size.
For those dealing with the daily struggles of caring for a loved one, we hear you. That's why AARP created a community with experts and other caregivers to help us better care for ourselves and the ones we love.
A single ember that escapes from a wildfire can travel more than a mile. That single ember can ignite and destroy your home or even your community. You can't control where the ember will land, only what happens when it does. Get Fire Adapted now at fireadapted.org.